I was standing 6 feet from my husband when the notary asked him to initial page 14, and Derek pressed the pen down with the same hand that had been squeezing his girlfriend's thigh under the table not 40 minutes earlier. He thought he was signing a revised life insurance beneficiary form. A birthday gift to himself, the way I'd framed it. Simplified paperwork, honey. One less thing on your plate. He didn't read a single page. He never read anything I put in front of him. That was the thing about Derek. He had spent 14 years assuming I was handling the details because I was good at details, and he was right. I was spectacular at details. The detail he missed was that he had just signed a postnuptial agreement transferring his interest in our home, his brokerage account, and his share of the rental property on Ustick Road to me. Irrevocable. Witnessed. Notarized at his own 50th birthday party between the crab cakes and the cake cutting, while 46 guests milled around our backyard in Boise, and a woman named Laurel sipped Prosecco 12 feet away in a dress my husband had paid for with my credit card. But this story doesn't start at a birthday party. It starts in a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service evidence lab with a dead falcon and a hunch I couldn't shake. My name is Petra Linden Galvez. I'm 42. I'm a forensic ornithologist, which, yes, is a real job, and yes, I've heard every bird joke you're composing right now. What I do, specifically, is analyze feather microstructure, DNA degradation, and isotope signatures to trace the origins of illegally trafficked birds of prey for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service out of the Boise field office. I make $94,200 a year. My husband told people I worked with birds like I was running a petting zoo. Here's what that job actually means. It means I spend my days reconstructing invisible chains of evidence. A single barbule, that's the microscopic hook on a feather filament, can tell me what continent a bird was captured on, what it was fed in captivity, how long it was confined, and who handled it last. I trace things. I reconstruct timelines from fragments that other people throw away. I am, professionally and pathologically, a person who finds what has been hidden. And that skill set, the one Derek called boring dinner conversation, is the reason he lost everything. I grew up in Meridian, just outside Boise, the middle child of 3 girls. My older sister Veronica was the beauty. My younger sister Cass was the wild card. I was the quiet one, the one who brought home report cards with handwritten notes from teachers that said things like Petra is exceptionally thorough, and Petra would benefit from more peer interaction. My mother, who ran a daycare out of our house and had the energy of a hummingbird on espresso, used to cup my face in both hands and say, "Mija, you see everything. That's your gift, but you gotta let people see you too." I never really learned that second part. My abuela Dolores lived with us until I was 16. She was 4'11" with hands like rawhide and opinions like sledgehammers. She used to sit on the back porch shelling pistachios and dispensing wisdom I was too young to appreciate. Her favorite thing to say, and she said it to me specifically, more than my sisters, because she knew I was the one who listened, was this: "Don't show the knife until the bread is on the table." I wrote that in my 7th grade journal. I thought it was about cooking. It wasn't about cooking. The thing about my job that matters for this story, and I need you to hold on to this, is that I am trained to maintain what we call chain of custody. Every piece of evidence I handle has to be documented, time-stamped, stored in a specific way, and traceable from the moment of collection to the moment it's presented in court. And if the chain breaks, the evidence is worthless. I have been maintaining chains of custody since I was 26 years old. I do it in my sleep. I do it reflexively. And when my marriage started to collapse, I did it to my husband. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My dream since I was 19 was to publish a field guide, not a textbook, a proper illustrated field guide to raptor feather identification, something that could sit in a ranger's back pocket in the Sawtooths or the Frank Church Wilderness. I'd been working on the illustrations for years, these meticulous watercolor plates of barred feather patterns, and I kept them in a flat file in our garage. Derek used to joke about it. Petra's coloring book, he'd call it. I stopped showing him new plates around year 8 of our marriage. Some dreams you protect by keeping them invisible. Remember the garage. Remember the flat file. That comes back. And then I met Derek Whitfield. I was 27, he was 31, and we were both at a fundraiser for the Peregrine Fund at the World Center for Birds of Prey. He was there because his company, Metalloy Solutions, had sponsored a table. He was selling orthopedic screws. I was there because I'd helped rehabilitate the captive gyrfalcon they were auctioning off naming rights for. He walked over to me, handed me a glass of Malbec, and said, "You're the only person here who actually knows what these birds are, aren't you?" That was the first thing he ever said to me, and it was the last honest observation he ever made about my work. We married 14 months later. Quick, I know. But Derek was, and I need to be fair about this because it makes the rest harder, genuinely magnetic in the beginning. He remembered details. He asked follow-up questions about my cases. He brought me breakfast burritos from Goldie's on Saturday mornings without being asked. On our third date, we drove up to Bogus Basin at dusk, and he asked me to identify every bird call we heard, and he listened. And he actually listened. I identified 11 species in 40 minutes, and he looked at me like I'd performed a magic trick. Looking back, I think he was studying me, learning what made me open up so he'd know exactly which doors to close later. The red flag I ignored was small. On our 5th date, we ran into his ex-girlfriend at a restaurant, Bardonnay, downtown Boise, the one on Capitol Boulevard. His entire demeanor changed, not angry, performative. He got louder, funnier, pulled me closer, ordered a more expensive bottle of wine. He was using me as a prop. I registered it, I filed it in the back of my brain, and then I let the Malbec wash it away because his hand was warm on my knee and I was 27 and I wanted to be chosen. I told myself it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. The good years were real. That's what makes this hard to tell. We bought the house on Hillview Drive in 2013. 4 bedrooms, a cottonwood tree in the backyard that dropped fluff every June like indoor snow. We had Mateo in 2015 and Luisa in 2017. Derek coached Mateo's t-ball team. We hosted Thanksgiving. We had a framed photo in the hallway of us at Redfish Lake, both sunburned, both laughing, my head on his shoulder, and for years I looked at that photo and thought, this is the truest version of us. He used to leave me notes in my lunch bag, little folded squares of paper that said things like, "Come home soon," and "You're my favorite weirdo." I found out during the 11 months that he'd been texting the same kind of messages to Laurel since at least 2021. "You're my favorite escape." "Come see me soon." Recycled tenderness, like emotional leftovers. The changes started in late 2022. Small things. His phone went face down on the counter, always. He started locking the bathroom door when he showered, which he'd never done. We were eating Thai takeout from My Thai on a Wednesday. I remember the yellow curry. I remember the rain against the kitchen window. And his phone buzzed, and his hand shot out so fast to flip it over that he knocked the Sriracha bottle off the table. He looked at me. I looked at him. He said, "Spam call." That was the first lie I caught in real time. Then the generosity. He bought me a Tiffany bracelet in January 2023, $600. We had never been Tiffany people. We were REI people. He gave it to me over dinner at Chandler's, this steakhouse on 8th Street, and he watched me open it with this expression I couldn't place at the time, but now recognize as guilt wearing a tuxedo. Then the criticism. It started so gradually I almost didn't notice. "Are you really wearing that to the Hendersons' dinner?" Followed by, "I'm just saying, you could try a little harder." Followed by, "Laurel," and he caught himself, and my blood went cold, and he recovered with, "Laurel at the office, she was saying women our age should invest in better basics. I thought of you." Laurel! That was the first time I heard her name, March 2023. He dropped it into our kitchen like a grenade with the pin still in, and I caught it before it hit the ground, and I held it, and I said nothing. Because I am a woman who traces things, I started with the credit card statements, joint account, the one he thought I never checked because you handle your accounts, I handle mine. But that account was technically joint. I had full access. And on February 14th, 2023, Valentine's Day, if you need the knife to twist a little harder, there was a charge at the Grove Hotel for $387. Derek told me he was at a sales conference in Twin Falls that night. The Grove Hotel is in downtown Boise, 8 minutes from our house. That was the crack. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. The fracture ran through everything. I didn't confront him. I didn't cry. I drove to the Costco parking lot on Milwaukee Street on a Tuesday afternoon, sat in my Subaru Outback, ate an entire sleeve of Ritz crackers from the center console, and stared at the concrete wall of the tire center for 45 minutes. Then I opened the Notes app on my phone and created a file. I titled it Things I Can't Say Yet. Entry number 1, Grove Hotel, February 14th, $387. He was 8 minutes away and chose not to come home. Over the next 11 months, that file grew to 347 entries, and I never cried again. Not once. I couldn't afford to. Crying is a release valve, and I needed the pressure. Here's where it escalated. Not all at once. Abuse never arrives all at once. It seeps in like water under a door, and by the time you notice, the whole floor is warped. Beat 1, June 2023, Derek's company barbecue at Julia Davis Park. I was talking to his regional VP, a woman named Portia, about isotope analysis. She'd asked, genuinely interested. And Derek walked over, put his arm around me, and said, loud enough for the circle to hear, "Careful, Portia. She'll talk your ear off about dead birds all night. Rena's special talent is making people's eyes glaze over." Everyone laughed. Portia looked uncomfortable. I smiled. I added it to the file. He called me Rena. My name is Petra. Rena was a nickname nobody used except Derek, and he used it the way you'd use a leash, short, dismissive, a reminder that he'd renamed me. Beat 2. August 2023, he told me we needed to consolidate finances for tax purposes and suggested, no, insisted, that I move my individual savings into our joint account, $61,400. I said I'd think about it. He brought it up 7 more times over 2 weeks, each time more irritated. "Why are you being weird about this? Don't you trust me?" On the 8th ask, I transferred $11,000 and kept the rest. He didn't check the amount. He never checked amounts. That, as it turns out, was the central flaw in his entire plan. Beat 3. September 2023. I found the Sephora receipts. $220 here, $185 there. Derek did not wear makeup. I did not shop at Sephora. I'd been using the same $12 CeraVe moisturizer since 2019. He was buying gifts, specific gifts, Charlotte Tilbury lipstick, Rare Beauty blush, a perfume I'd never smelled on him but once caught a ghost of on his collar when I hugged him after a late meeting. Tom Ford, Black Orchid, $142. I know because I found the receipt folded inside his gym bag, and I photographed it with a timestamp before putting it back exactly as I'd found it. Chain of custody, Beat 4, October 2023, the public humiliation. This one I'll never forget. We were at his brother Garrett's house for a Sunday dinner. Garrett, 39, an insurance adjuster who thought he was smarter than everyone because he once took a LSAT prep course and didn't finish it. Garrett's wife Marin had made pot roast. The kids were in the basement, and Derek, 3 bourbons deep, leaned back in his chair and said, apropos of nothing, "You know what's funny? Petra spent 8 years in college to look at bird feathers. 8 years. I didn't even finish my bachelor's, and I out-earn her." He didn't out-earn me. Not even close. My salary was $94,200. His was $88,000 with a variable commission that he inflated in conversation the way a pufferfish inflates when it senses a predator. But I didn't correct him. Marin looked at her plate. Garrett laughed. I took a bite of pot roast and added it to the file. "You're lucky I stay," Derek said to me in the car on the way home, while Mateo and Luisa slept in their car seats behind us. "You think any man wants to come home to a woman who'd rather study feathers than talk to her own husband?" I gripped the steering wheel at 10 and 2. I said nothing. Entry number 214, beat 5, November 2023. This one is where I almost broke. I came home from a 4-day evidence collection trip in McCall. We'd had a bald eagle poisoning case, 6 birds dead along the Payette River, and found that Derek had moved my flat file, the one with my field guide illustrations, 14 years of watercolor plates. He'd shoved it into the corner of the garage behind the lawn equipment to make room for the new workbench. 3 of the plates were creased. 1 had a water stain from the concrete floor. The barred owl plate, the one I'd spent 11 hours on, was torn at the corner. I stood in that garage at 9 p.m. holding the torn plate, and something inside me went very, very quiet. Not sad, not angry, quiet, like the sound a house makes right before the foundation settles. "I needed the space, Rena," he said from the doorway. "It's just your coloring book. Entry number 241, beat 6. This came from someone other than Derek, and it hit harder because of it." December 2023. My mother called. She'd had lunch with Derek without telling me, and she said in her gentle daycare provider voice, "Mija, Derek is worried about you. He says you've been cold, distant. He says he's trying and you won't meet him halfway." A pause. Then, "Petra, you can't just live inside your head. You have to be present. You have to be warm. Men need warmth." My own mother. Briefed by my husband, deployed as a weapon. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, "Mom, he's sleeping with someone named Laurel and buying her Tom Ford perfume with money from our joint credit card." But I couldn't. Not yet. The bread wasn't on the table, so I said, "You're right, Mom. I'll try harder." And I added it to the file. Beat 7, January 2024, the institutional threat. Derek sat me down at the kitchen table. Luisa was at a play date. Mateo was at a friend's house, and told me in the calm, rehearsed tone of a man who had practiced in the mirror that he thought we should restructure ownership of the house. He wanted to remove my name from the deed. "For liability purposes," he said. "If something happens with your government job, if someone sues the agency and they go after personal assets, we need to protect the house. I am a federal employee. That's not how any of that works." But the fact that he said it, with that practiced calm, meant he'd talked to someone, a lawyer probably, maybe Garrett, who fancied himself a legal mind. Someone had told Derek to get the house in his name only, and Derek, who never read anything, had memorized the pitch. "I'll think about it," I said. "What's there to think about?" he said. "This is basic protection, Rena, unless you don't trust me." There it was again, the trust card, the one he played every time he wanted me to hand over something that was mine. "I trust you," I said. "Let me just talk to my own accountant first." His jaw tightened. "Why do you need your own accountant? Garrett handles our stuff." "I'll think about it," I repeated. I didn't think about it. I went to my car, drove to the Flying Pie Pizzeria on Fairview, ordered a slice of pepperoni and a Dr. Pepper, and sat in a booth by the window and began drafting what would eventually become a 47-page evidence dossier. Because I'm not a woman who thinks about it, I'm a woman who documents it. Beat 8, the cruelest moment, February 2024. I want to be precise about this because precision is how I survived it. I was homesick with a sinus infection. Derek thought I'd gone to work. I was in bed, half asleep, when I heard his voice downstairs. He was on speakerphone in the kitchen. Our old iPad, the one I'd given to Mateo for educational games, was still synced to the kitchen Bluetooth speaker from when Luisa had been playing Encanto songs the night before. The audio routed through the baby monitor app I'd kept installed on my phone since Luisa was an infant. I heard everything. Derek was talking to Laurel. "She's not going anywhere," he said. She's like furniture, babe. She's reliable. You sit on her and she holds you up, but you don't get excited about a couch. You don't wake up wanting to see a couch." Laurel laughed, a bright, easy laugh, the laugh of a woman who has never been called furniture. "Once I get the house in my name," Derek continued, "Garrett's going to help me restructure the LLC. We move the rental income through the new entity, and when I file, she gets the Subaru, maybe some of the retirement, and she walks away thinking she got a fair deal. She doesn't know what she doesn't know." "What about the kids?" Laurel asked. "She'll get primary. I don't want primary. I want weekends. Weekends are the fun part." I lay in my bed, phone on my chest, baby monitor, app recording. My body was perfectly still. My sinuses throbbed. The furnace kicked on. I could hear its low hum through the vents. And something clicked. Not a dramatic transformation, not a movie moment, just a quiet mechanical click, like a deadbolt sliding into place. I was done being furniture, but I wasn't going to flip the table. I was going to disassemble the entire room piece by piece and walk out carrying everything that was mine. I sat up. I opened my laptop. I created a new folder on my encrypted external drive, the one I used for federal evidence, and named it Payette. Like the river, like the Eagle case, because that's what this was now, a case. And I began to work. Now here's the part of the story where everything you think you know shifts, because while Derek was scheming with Garrett to restructure ownership and hide income, he was operating under a fatal assumption that his wife was just a woman who looked at feathers. He forgot what I actually do. My job title is forensic ornithologist, but my daily work is indistinguishable from financial forensics. I trace supply chains. I analyze transaction records from black market wildlife dealers. I follow shell companies in the Middle East that buy captive-bred falcons for $80,000 apiece. I have testified in federal court 11 times. I know what a fraudulent paper trail looks like better than most CPAs because I've been following them across 6 continents for 15 years. The first thing I did was pull our complete financial records, not just the joint account, everything. Tax returns going back 7 years, mortgage documents, the LLC operating agreement for the rental property on Yustic Road, the one Derek and Garrett had set up in 2019 and told me was just a standard holding company. I requested copies from the Idaho Secretary of State. Cost me $12 to unravel a conspiracy. What I found was this. Derek and Garrett had been funneling rental income, roughly $2,800 a month, into a separate account that wasn't listed on our joint taxes for 4 years. That's approximately $134,400 in unreported income. Unreported to me, unreported to the IRS. The account was in Garrett's name, but Derek was a signatory. They'd been splitting it. Remember when I said Derek didn't out-earn me? He wasn't even reporting a third of his actual household income. The man who told everyone he cleared $2 was actually clearing closer to $122,000 when you added the rental skimming, and he was hiding it from his wife, the forensic ornithologist, the woman who traces hidden money through falcon trafficking networks. That's like hiding a stake from a bloodhound. The second thing I did was consult a lawyer. Not any lawyer. I drove to Twin Falls, 128 miles from Boise, because I needed someone outside Derek's network, and met with Jolanda Prieto Nash, a family law attorney with a reputation for handling high-conflict divorces involving hidden assets. Her office smelled like lemon pledge and old paper. She had a framed cross-stitch on her wall that said, "Documentation is love." I knew immediately I was in the right place. Jolanda looked at my evidence, the baby monitor recordings, the credit card analysis, the LLC shell game, the Sephora receipts, the notes app file, all of it, and she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "How long have you been building this?" 5 months, I said. It was March 2024 by then. "You're going to win," she said, "but we're not going to rush it. We're going to let him bury himself deeper, and then we're going to hand him the shovel at exactly the right moment." My abuela would have liked Yolanda. The third thing, and this is the part I'm not proud of. Actually, no, I'm extremely proud. The third thing I did was befriend Laurel. I know. Hear me out. Laurel Kemper was a 33-year-old marketing coordinator at a boutique agency in downtown Boise. She drove a white Audi Q3. She had an Instagram with 4,200 followers and an aesthetic that could be described as aspirational brunch. She posted stories from restaurants I recognized, restaurants Derek had told me he was visiting with clients. She tagged no one. She was careful, but not careful enough. I didn't approach her as Derek's wife. I approached her as a potential client. My friend Yesenia, who runs a small Raptor education nonprofit, needed marketing help. I suggested Laurel's agency. Yesenia, who knew everything, who had been my secret ally since October, made the call. Laurel took the meeting. I attended as the content consultant. Over 2 meetings and 1 lunch at Fork in downtown Boise, I had the beet salad. Laurel had avocado toast, because of course she did. I learned 3 critical things. 1. Laurel did not know Derek was married. He had told her he was divorced with shared custody. 2. Laurel was genuinely not a bad person, just a woman who'd been lied to by a man who lied to everyone. 3. Derek had promised Laurel that he was about to come into a property that they could live in together. My property, my house, the one my salary had been paying the mortgage on since 2013. I didn't tell Laurel the truth, not yet. The bread wasn't on the table, but I did get her to mention casually that Derek had shown her paperwork for the house and told her the transfer was almost done. She even said, laughing, "He's so organized. He had this whole folder." A folder. Derek Whitfield, who had never organized a sock drawer in his life, had a folder. I went home that night. The kids were asleep. Derek was at a client dinner. I found the folder in his nightstand drawer, underneath a Men's Health magazine and a half-eaten pack of Altoids. It contained a draft quit-claim deed removing my name from the Hillview Drive property, unsigned, a printout of Idaho community property law with highlighted sections, highlighted wrong, by the way, he'd misread the statute, and a handwritten note in Garrett's writing that said, "Get her to sign at the same time as the insurance stuff. She won't read it. She won't read it." 14 years of marriage, 2 children, and a mortgage I'd paid $327,000 into, and his plan was, she won't read it. I photographed every page, returned the folder, ate 3 gas station peanut butter crackers from the pack in my glove box, went to bed. Entry number 312. They think I'm furniture. Furniture doesn't read. The next 5 months were surgical. Jolanda and I built the case. We documented the hidden rental income. We calculated my exact contribution to every shared asset. The house, $327,000 in mortgage payments, all from my salary or my separate account. The rental property, $48,000 of the down payment from my inheritance from Abuela Dolores. The brokerage account, $71,600, seeded entirely by my contributions because Derek didn't believe in the stock market until 2022 when he started using it to park money he was skimming. We drafted a postnuptial agreement, Jolanda's masterpiece, 14 pages of precise legal language that, in essence, transferred Derek's interest in the home, the brokerage account, and his share of the Ustic Road rental to me in exchange for my assumption of all household liabilities, which sounded scary but actually amounted to $4,300 in credit card debt, most of which was his Sephora and hotel charges. The plan was the birthday party, Derek's 50th, June 15th, 2024. I'd been planning it for months, and he thought the planning was the party. He didn't realize the party was the delivery mechanism. Here's how it worked. Derek had been asking me for months to update our estate planning. He wanted new life insurance beneficiaries, updated powers of attorney, the whole suite. What he actually wanted was to slip the quitclaim deed into a stack of estate documents and have me sign it without reading. Garrett had suggested this. I knew because I'd recorded Garrett saying it on a phone call Derek took in the garage on May 3rd while I stood on the other side of the drywall with my phone's voice memo running. So I said yes. Let's do it at the party. We'll have a notary there anyway for the insurance documents. Remember, your company requires notarized beneficiary changes. We can knock everything out at once. Derek loved this idea. Efficient, painless. He could get me to sign the quitclaim while I was distracted by hostessing duties and 3 glasses of Chardonnay. Except I don't drink Chardonnay. I'd been pouring it into the potted ficus by the kitchen window all year, and he never noticed. The man who claimed to know me better than anyone couldn't identify my drink of choice. It's Topo Chico with lime. Always has been. I hired the notary, a woman named Belindy So, recommended by Jolanda, who understood exactly what was happening and had notarized documents in adversarial situations before. I prepared 2 sets of documents. Set 1, Derek's stack, which he believed contained the quitclaim deed for me to sign plus his insurance forms. Set 2, my stack, which contained the postnuptial agreement for him to sign plus what appeared to be the same insurance forms. The party was on a Saturday, 87 degrees, the cottonwood was shedding, 46 guests in the backyard. I'd made Derek's favorite, carne asada from the recipe Abuela Dolores taught me, the one with the guajillo chile marinade, and I'd rented a taco cart from a place on Orchard Street. Mateo and Luisa were running through the sprinkler. Derek was holding court by the grill, telling the story about the time he almost went pro in baseball, a story he'd told at every party since 2012, a story that was not true. At 6:40 p.m., I told Derek it was time to sign the paperwork before it got too dark and everyone got too festive. He grinned. He thought this was his moment. He called Garrett over. Garrett looked smug. Laurel, yes, she was there, introduced to our friends as Derek's colleague from a partner firm, stood near the drink table, scrolling her phone, unaware that she was about to watch a controlled demolition. Belindy sat up at the patio table. I placed Derek's stack in front of him. He picked up the pen. Just initial where the tabs are, I said. I already went through everything. That's my girl, he said, always handling the details. He initialed 14 pages. He signed the final page with a flourish, the pen stroke of a man who believed he was winning. Belindy notarized it. Garrett nodded. Derek kissed me on the cheek. Then I said, "Actually, honey, I had Jolanda review everything too, just to be safe. She flagged a couple of items." Derek froze. "Who's Jolanda?" "My attorney." The word attorney landed like a brick in a fishbowl. Garrett's smile evaporated. Derek looked at the documents in his hand. For the first time in maybe a decade, he tried to read something. "You signed a postnuptial agreement," I said. My voice was level, the same voice I use when presenting evidence in federal court. "It transfers your interest in the house, the brokerage, and the Ustic rental to me. It's witnessed and notarized. Jolanda can walk you through the details, but the short version is, everything you were trying to steal from me, I just took back." Derek's face went through 4 stages: confusion, disbelief, the slow creep of understanding, and then, this is the part I'll remember until I die, fear. Rena, what? Petra, I said. My name is Petra. Garrett stepped forward. This isn't legal. You can't. He didn't know what he was signing. He's a 50-year-old man with a college education who chose not to read a document before signing it, Belindy said, capping her notary stamp. That's not a legal defense. Derek looked around the party. 46 guests, most of whom were now watching. The taco cart guy had stopped mid-tortilla. Mateo and Luisa were still in the sprinkler, oblivious, and I was grateful for that. Also, I said, and this was the part that I'd practiced in my car, in the Costco parking lot, whispering it to myself over and over for weeks. I've referred the matter of $134,400 in unreported rental income to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. The referral includes documentation of the LLC structure you and Garrett created to funnel income off the books. My forensic analysis is attached. It's quite thorough. You know me. I'm good with details. Garrett's face went white, not pale, white, like the blood had been vacuumed out of him. Derek grabbed my arm. You don't know what you're doing. I removed his hand, one finger at a time. I know exactly what I'm doing. I've known for 11 months. Then I turned to Laurel, who was standing by the drink table with her Prosecco suspended halfway to her mouth. Laurel, I'm sorry. He told you he was divorced. He's not. We've been married for 14 years. We have 2 children. He was planning to give you our house. I don't blame you for any of this. You were lied to. But you should know who you're dealing with. Laurel set down the Prosecco. She looked at Derek. She looked at me. She looked at the party guests, all of whom were now performing the most aggressive casual eavesdropping in Boise history. She picked up her purse, walked to her white Audi Q3, and drove away. I never saw her again. I looked at Derek one more time. He was standing in the yard he'd been planning to steal from me, surrounded by the guests he'd been performing for, next to the brother who'd helped him steal money from the IRS, and for the first time in 14 years, he had nothing to say. I picked up my Topo Chico. Enjoy the carne asada. Then I walked inside. 7 words. I'd earned every one of them. What happened after the party unfolded with the kind of cascading inevitability that I usually only see in federal wildlife trafficking cases, where you pull one thread and the entire network collapses? Within 2 weeks, Laurel blocked Derek on everything: his phone, Instagram, even LinkedIn. She also contacted Yolanda's office, my attorney, and provided a voluntary statement confirming that Derek had represented himself as divorced and had shown her documents related to the Hillview property. She didn't have to do that. She chose to. Like I said, she wasn't a bad person. Within a month, the IRS opened a formal investigation into the Ustic Road LLC. Garrett hired his own attorney. Derek hired a different attorney. Their attorneys immediately started blaming each other's clients, which is exactly what happens when you build a conspiracy on the foundation of "she won't read it." The estimated tax liability, including penalties and interest, was north of $52,000, split between them. Garrett's wife, Marin, called me. She didn't yell. She just said, "I had no idea," and I believed her, because Marin was another woman who'd been told to trust the men who were robbing her. Within 2 months, Derek moved out of the Hillview house. He had to, because the post-nuptial agreement was airtight, and Yolanda had filed for legal separation the Monday after the party. He rented a studio apartment on Fairview Avenue, the kind with popcorn ceilings and a parking lot that smells like hot asphalt. His regional VP, Portia, the same woman he'd embarrassed me in front of at the barbecue, called me to say that Derek's personal situation had become a distraction at Metalloy, and that his territory was being reassigned. He wasn't fired, but he was diminished. And for a man like Derek, diminishment is worse than termination, because termination lets you be the victim. Diminishment just makes you smaller. Garrett and Marin separated. I heard later from Yesenia that Marin found her own evidence of financial irregularities once she knew where to look. Turns out the apple didn't fall far from the Whitfield tree. My mother called me in July. She didn't say much at first. Then she said, "Mija, I'm sorry I listened to him instead of looking at you." That one entry, number 289, the one about her calling me cold, I deleted it from the file. Some things you let go of not because they stop hurting, but because holding them costs more than they're worth. Derek's final contact came in September. A text message. "Can we talk? I miss the kids." I didn't respond with cruelty. I responded with Jolanda's office number and a visitation schedule. He gets every other weekend and alternating holidays. Mateo asked me once why Daddy lives in a different house now, and I said, "Sometimes families change shape, but the love doesn't." I don't know if that's true, but I know it's what a 9-year-old needs to hear. Laurel, I learned through mutual acquaintance, started dating someone else. A woman, actually. I wish her well. I genuinely mean that. The flat file is back in the garage, but not in the corner. It's on a proper drafting table I bought myself from a woodworker in Garden City. The barred owl plate, the torn one, I reframed and hung above it. The tear is still visible. I didn't repair it. Some damage you leave visible so you remember what it cost to survive. And the field guide? I submitted a proposal to the University of Idaho Press in August. They accepted it in October. Publication is scheduled for spring 2025. The dedication page reads, "For Abuela Dolores, who taught me to wait for the bread. Don't show the knife until the bread is on the table. She was right. She was always right. Last week I sat on the back porch, my house, my cottonwood tree, with a Topo Chico and a plate of guajillo marinated carne asada that I'd made for myself and the kids. Luisa was drawing birds in a sketchbook. Mateo was reading a book about peregrine falcons that I'd brought home from the office. The sun was going down behind the Boise foothills, and the light was that specific shade of amber that only happens in September in the high desert, the kind of light that makes everything look like it was painted by someone who loved it. I took a sip of my Topo Chico. I looked at my daughter drawing and my son reading and the sky turning gold over the mountains, and I thought, I am not furniture. I am not quiet. I am not cold. I am a woman who traces things, and I traced my way back to myself.